He said, Gerner, if you ain't putting power down through all four wheels, you ain't doing, I won't say shit, I'll say squat.
Yeah. Uh, if you know.
All right, gentlemen. Well, before we begin, I was wondering if you could both tell me your name and what you do, and then we'll get through to some other things.
Sure. Dan Gray. I am a avid Audi enthusiast, and I've turned my car hobby into a profession now, where I'm consigning cars at auction for people. I started a company called Authentic Auctions, basically helping people auction their cars on digital platforms. I'm doing photography for them, video work, negotiating everything with the platforms, and then hosting the auction. And sort of basically, it's a white glove service handling all of the sales process. My hobby in cars, and specifically Audis, put me in touch with Jeff Gerner. I actually traded an RS4 for a RS4 that had a Gerner motor in it back in probably 2018 or so. I quickly became aware of who Jeff Gerner was at that time, and reached out to him to seek guidance on what to do with this car and motor and where to take it. That's kind of when I was introduced to him. At the time, he was running 4-Ring Performance and still providing a lot of parts for these motors, and he was an invaluable resource on what to do with this motor, what I should do. I actually took the motor and put it in an RS6 Avant. That's kind of when I got to know Jeff. I'm now working on another RS4 that has another Jeff Gerner motor in it. So those are my ties into him and the platform. And so Jeff, built out this land speed RS4 that he raced at Bonneville and Pike's Peak and various standing mile events. And he started building that, 2012? And he's now retiring from racing. So he's looking to move on from that car, and I'm helping him do that. So I flew out to Kansas City and got to meet Jeff in person for the first time, which was fantastic. I got to see the car in person, also amazing, and took a ton of pictures and videos, and took it to Cars and Bids to list it, and they were great. Cars Live now, it's got to be setting some sort of record with them. It's already got 24,000 views, and it's auctioning. It's the auction's running from now, and it went live a few days ago, but it's running until Thursday. Thursday, like late afternoon.
Thursdays. What's the date on Thursday? It looks like 14th.
Yeah, 14th. People can check it out there. It's featured also. I think it ends around 4 p.m. Eastern time or so. Somewhere around there. Yep.
We're recording Monday. I should have this podcast live Tuesday, just for listeners' reference.
Yeah. People will have time to get involved.
So, Jeff, that's a long way to get to you. You're the focus on this. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about yourself and this car behind you?
Well, I grew up on a farm north of Kansas City, Missouri. I was a farm boy, and I learned all the mechanical stuff that farm boys have to learn. And I rebuilt my first Briggs & Stratton lawnmower motor when I was 8 years old. By the time I was 17, I was building V8s. And after I graduated high school, I started racing AHRA drag racing. Had a 68 Camaro. I actually won an AHRA national event with that car in 1972. And then in 73, I switched over to a B-fuel dragster, and I was on the Midwest Junior Fuel Circuit. And then when the Arab oil embargo happened, it was too expensive to tow the car around, and I had just discovered motocross. And so in 74, I said, I can buy a dirt bike cheaper than I can buy a pair of cylinder heads for my dragster. I was having a little bit of a rough time with my partner on a drag car. I said, I'm switching to motocross. So from 74 to 84, when I was 31, I raced 1 year in senior class, raced motocross for 10 years, and then got married. And by 87, I had a baby, and I had to focus on that. In 88, I bought a Honda CRX and started autocrossing. A couple years into autocross, I started doing track day weekends, road race stuff. So I've done a little bit of everything. As far as my profession, I worked for the aviation department, city of Kansas City, for 31 years. Went in at the lowest labor position in 1972 before the airport actually opened. When I left, I had been the fleet manager and the facility manager for KC Aviation Department. Worked my way up through all the positions, which included automotive mechanic, heavy equipment mechanic, shop supervisor, shop superintendent, fleet manager, yada, yada, I
Yeah.
just worked my way through, and I was fortunate to be able to retire in 2003 after 31 years because I started in 72.
Well, so before we get to retirement, what I'm curious about is how do you go from a Honda CRX and working in aviation to running an Audi in motorsport?
That's a funny story.
Yeah.
I had a buddy, it's the Import Masters, which you may have noticed on the hood,
Right.
was a Volkswagen and Audi repair shop here in Kansas City, still exists today. And my German buddy, Mike Schoengert, ran the shop by himself forever. We were both in C Street prepared class during our autocrossing, which included the Nationals. Mike was a VW Porsche Audi guy, It'll require just one little cuss word, but Mike said, we were in the C Street prepared class, and he had a Porsche 912 motor behind him, and I had the CRX motor in front of me. We raced within a tenth of a second of each other constantly.
Hmm.
But Mike liked quattros. And he said one day when we were sitting around bench racing, he said, Gerner, if you ain't putting power down through all four wheels, you ain't doing, I won't say shit, I'll say squat. So that made me want an Audi, because I saw how much fun they were having with theirs. Any rate, in 1999, I was able to buy a 94 S4,
Yeah.
and I just loved the magnitude of that Audi. It was so solid. Those cars cost $47,500 in 1994,
Didn't they?
which was more than a Porsche 911 cost back then.
Hmm.
It was just such a solid, beautiful car. And I began hot rodding that car. And I just switched from Hondas to Audis. That's how it happened.
No, you'd been building, if I recall, you said your first engine when you were the Briggs Stratton when you were 7, and then or 8, and then
Yeah.
by 18 you're on V8. So, at what point do you start rebuilding Audi engines and getting into that?
Well, that's the interesting part. When I retired in 2003, I was only 50 years old, but I had 31 years with the aviation department, Kansas City. So I had to find other jobs to keep me busy from going crazy, I worked for an automotive shop as a manager, and I was building a guy's Honda motor. And I went to a shop north of here. It was in the Kansas City metro, and it was a guy named Curtis Farley. He had a dyno shop and a machine shop, and he just had his 3,000-foot shop emptied out. And he goes, Jeff, you ought to rent that for me and start yourself an engine shop, which is what I did in 2009. I'd been keeping busy from 03 to 09, doing different jobs. I bought this Audi in 2007. because when my wife and I went and saw World's Fastest Indian, and I was so motivated by that movie, I said, if that guy can get there from New Zealand, I can get out there from Kansas City.
Well, tell me a little about World's Fastest Indian because I've not seen it.
Oh my God.
Gotta see it.
Yeah.
Great movie.
It's Anthony Hopkins' best work ever, and he's a great actor. You'll have so much fun seeing that movie. It's about a guy that came from New Zealand with his motorcycle and set records back in the mid-60s.
Yeah, Burt Monroe.
Burt Monroe, Munro. It's a really fun movie. We just seen that, and when I walked out of the theater with my wife, Linda, I said, if he can make it from New Zealand, I can make it from Kansas City. And in my Audi video from 2012 that Quattro World did,
Mm-hmm.
I had mentioned the movie. I had mentioned the fact that 1970, towing a trailer vacation with my parents to go out and camp across the country and end up at Disney World, Disneyland. We stopped at the Bonneville Salt Flats and took the trailer off, and my dad let me drive the 66 Caprice. We got there just after Speed Week in August. And I got to drive the whole family down the Salt Flats in that 66 Caprice.
Oh, wow.
And I said, someday I'm coming back here. It was just a whole life story, All the years later, after I got my child raised, and she had moved on to college at that point, because I knew how substantial and solid their S4s were from owning one on the street, I said, I want this for my Bonneville car. Because I promised my wife that if I had a wreck, I wouldn't get killed. I knew.
Think promise.
These are important details.
Yeah. That car was built like a tank,
Yeah.
And I knew by the time I got the roll cage and all the safety stuff in it that, if I spun out or whatever, I knew the car would hold up and not kill me. That's why, and I also knew the salt was slippery, so I wanted Quattro, baby.
Mm.
If you're gonna put 1,000+ horsepower down through 4-inch wide tires, which you have to run at Bonneville, they're basically funny car front tires.
Okay.
Up to 300 miles an hour. You're going to get that kind of power down on slippery salt. Quattro is a very big benefit. It makes it more safe. If you look back at the old Bonneville videos that Quattro World and other people did, man, the car is just so settled going down the salt. I'm not having to do much steering inputs,
Yeah.
I knew I had to keep my mind and my eyes way in front of the car. And, when you're on something slippery, you want to make steering inputs like your hands are in molasses. You don't want to do this. Between the Quattro stability and my mind in front of the car, it just was stable as hell.
So what was the first year you took the car out there?
We bought the car in 07, in the spring of 07, bought it over in St. Louis and drove it home. I knew I was going to do Bonneville. So me and a couple of buddies drove this car here, out to the salt in 07. I asked a lot of questions of the racers. I looked at a lot of cars because I'd never been there. I wanted to learn what needed to be learned before I built the car. And also on my bucket list was the Pike Peak Hill Climb. I had to get the Pikes Peak Hill Climb done before I did Bonneville.
Before you did Bonneville? Was that because how the car was built, or why would you?
No, I built the car for Bonneville, but bucket list, I had to do the road race stuff up the mountain
Okay.
Checking
before.
boxes. How many
Yeah.
cars have done Bonneville and Pikes Peak?
That's a
Not
good
very
question.
many.
That's a
Not
good
very
question.
many. It still got the sticker on the door.
From Pikes
Things,
Peak.
things, things to look up.
What,
Probably
Yeah,
not
what,
many.
so what year was it at Pikes Peak?
2008.
Okay. And I don't know offhand when they paved, but I'm gonna guess it was paved by then.
No, it was half dirt and half
Was it?
gravel. And I was lucky to get to do the Pikes Peak Hill climb before they paved it all.
Right.
The top half of the mountain was gravel and dirt, which was also good for a quattro.
Yeah. So tell me about Pikes Peak. I mean, how was it?
Well, I got screwed by the only GM part on the car and by
No.
a guy that had a wreck in front of me. I didn't put a wheel wrong in any of the 3-day practices. And going up right past the point where they check your brakes when you're coming down the hill, a guy crashed and they red flagged me. I had to drive all the way back down the mountain, and they only gave me 15 minutes to restart.
Ugh.
These S4s have a great big heavy alternator on them, and I would try to lighten the car as much as possible to go up the mountain. So I had put a GM alternator on it. On the second pass up, well up above the tree line, the alternator failed, and I had to pull over. There's a video, Jeff Gerner, Pikes Peak, that shows me sitting in the seat after they walk up to me with a camera.
Ugh.
Guys, I was not happy.
I
But
bet.
any rate, I got it off my bucket list. Didn't roll down the mountain,
That's a plus.
Then all the focus turned to Bonneville. That included completely changing the suspension, completely changing the undercar containment of the drive shaft, the undercar aero. Our first year at Bonneville was 2009. We were able to make the 3 runs to get the 200 plus mile an hour license in one day, which is highly unusual because the car was so reliable. All we had to do was take it back to the starting line and refill the ice in the intercooler tank and take our second licensing run. So we got that all done in one day. It only had a GT40 turbo on it, making about 720 horsepower. And I'm looking up at the plaque. It did 222,996 that first year, and the record was 224. So,
What sort of aerodynamic? I know you said you changed the under tray. What sort of aerodynamic changes would have been made to the car at that point?
well, it's an F production supercharged car, and they don't let you make in the production class. They don't let you change any aero on the car other than taking the windshield wipers off and the rear view mirrors off. That's all you can do to slick it up. But they do allow containment of the drive shaft. That's
Okay.
very important because the drive shaft.
Which you did such a good job of that somebody actually thought you deleted it. I don't know if you saw that comment.
Yeah, I saw that comment. They couldn't see the drive shaft anymore.
Was this on Cars and Bids?
Yes, yeah. Somebody was like, "Oh man, did they convert it to front wheel drive?" And I was like, had to correct them. So
But at any rate, I covered the drive shaft and put containment in there so it blew up. It couldn't come out and blow my rear tires out, that type of thing. I used the center tunnel where the stock exhaust runs. I used that center tunnel to aim the turbo downpipe into.
Hmm.
Because I'd studied aerodynamics and I know that hot air blowing under the car and then having to pinch down in the back actually adds some rear downforce, like on F1
Fascinating.
cars for a while.
Yeah.
That was another thing that makes the car so damn stable. When you dyno the car now, if you're 20 yards in front of it, you think and the hood's open and the fans are blowing, you think the turbo is going to suck you into it.
Mm.
And if you're behind the car, you think it's going to blow you out the shop door. That's the volume of exhaust that comes out of this motor at 10,000 RPM. It's just beastly, you know. And so you want to make sure that that volume of exhaust passes under the car in a proper manner.
Right.
That's why you can't see the drive shaft anymore. But
What's you said 10,000 RPM? What's red line on this thing?
well, when I was running at Bonneville with the stock oil pump, it was 9,500. By the time I switched it to the dry sump pump and my custom oil pan and all that, a little bit of a backstory. We ran way faster than the record in 2011. And I still had the stock oil pump on it because I was hard headed and I wanted to run it with all the stock motor, but I was being stupid, frankly. On the backup run, the oil pump gears blew up, and 15 seconds later, the number one piston rod come out to the side of the block. And my wife was crying. You know, it was really sad, but because we had the speed to set the record. That motivated me to redesign the whole motor, build a custom dry sump system, add the first ATI super damper that had ever been on an Audi 5-cylinder engine. ATI, they make super dampers for all the pro stock cars and all those V8 racers. And I actually added a custom ATI damper to the 5-cylinder with a integrated drive and a 25 millimeter wide timing belt and special oil pump belt, you know, for the dry sump pump. And it's got a Peterson Fluid Systems dry sump on it. Then when we went back in 2012, because it's a solid lifter motor, not a hydraulic lifter motor, red line was 11,000 RPM.
That's
which
crazy.
Which is completely insane. Yeah.
It is completely insane. So I guess that's my question though. When you're running at those record speeds, what sort of RPMs are you turning?
Well, when you build a motor for Bonneville, it's very important that the highest horsepower is at the very top of the rev range, because that's where the coefficient of friction on the car and the drag, I mean, you get above 220 mile an hour and you can feel the air, car fighting with the air, you know. And
What's that like? If you don't mind me asking, I've never been that fast.
well, it's fun. It's very mind focusing, George.
Okay.
It keeps you focused. And the course narrows the faster you go. Yeah, 11,000 RPM is what it took to do the 250.009 over the fourth mile. And when the car exited the fourth mile, it was at approximately 261. And they forgot to put it on the ticket. And I had to go back and ask them afterwards what was the exit speed. And they looked it up in their digital books. And they said it was 261.
That's good to know too, because there was another thing somebody commented about, that the fact that it was written in afterwards, basically. And somebody else corrected them that it was GPS verified, but it was just another thing that, you know, there's always someone.
They may not understand that the 250.009 or any Bonneville speed record is an average over a mile.
Yeah.
And you enter the mile that you set the record on, you don't enter at the same speed you exit. You know, you're accelerating through that final mile. You know, you enter it at 240 and leave it at 260, you get a 250, you know.
So do you think when you hit 261 exit speed, do you think that was basically the mechanical limit of the car, or could on a given day with the wind variance and temperature variance, everything else, could you go 10 miles per hour faster, or what?
No, it was topped out.
Yeah. Okay.
It was
So
topped.
you'd have to change the gearing on the transmission or make some more power basically to get it faster, you think? Yeah.
Well, the car still has its 411 final drives in it,
Yeah.
Does it?
and it had a B5 6-speed in it back then.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I remember the 6 gear in a B5 6-speed is 069 to 1.
Yep. Sounds
And
right.
you combine that with 11,000 RPM, 411 gears, and it takes
Yep.
a lot of RPM. So
Yep.
you have to make the motor make the most horsepower at the very top.
Yep.
Okay? And because that's where the drag is hardest, and you need the wheel speed to do the mile per hour. It's all science, you know. It was maxed out.
I mean, it's a super impressive speed.
Oh, and
I'm just thinking if, somebody's
Yeah.
going to buy this thing and try to go run it, are they trying to I think just to repeat that would be a feat. Never mind to try to eclipse it.
Let me tell you some more engine science.
Yeah.
People ask me why I didn't run a 92.8 stroke crank in it. I said, because I want the power to be at the very top. It had a turbo big enough on it that it didn't spool fully till 8,500 RPM. So the power band was from 85 to 11. And that's where you needed it to be to run 10 mile per hour. The one thing I want to bring up, guys, is the biggest mistake through ignorance that I ever made was not knowing that SCTA, Southern California Timing Association, had a rule that if you ran to the 4 or the 5 on the first day and you didn't run that far on the second day, I only ran to the 3rd mile. I accelerated harder off the line, and I only ran to the 3rd mile because I had the 250 on the car. I didn't want to hurt the motor, which, by the way, when I tore it down, it was perfect. And didn't even have the coating worn off the bearings, because the drive pump and a superior oil system. The reason my record at Bonneville is only 236 because I only ran to the 3rd mile on the second day on the backup run. And so they would only give me my 3-mile time from the first day on the down run. I didn't get to combine the 250.009.
Yeah.
I had to take the speed that I was going at the 3-mile mark, and I was waiting longer to set the speed on the down run on the first day. So that was all down to my ignorance of the rules, and that's why the record is 236. If I would have run to the 4-mile mark on the second day, the record would be 250 something.
Yeah. Well, still pretty good.
So that record was set in, you said 2015?
No, 2012.
2012. And is it still standing? How long did it stand?
Yeah, it's still standing.
Is it?
It's a great question, George. Yeah. As far as I can tell, the sedan record's still standing.
Yeah, it was 224 and we went 236 even with the chop off time on the 3-mile.
That is an insane speed.
Yeah.
So how much do you think, I know, especially with the C3 and carried through to the C4, aerodynamics were such an important thing in design for that car. in that era. You having the experience you do in aviation, I'm sure you've got your own considerable experience with aerodynamics. Was that one of the compelling factors when you decide not just this car being a tank, and so your wife was cool with it, but was the aerodynamic capability of the
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. S Force and N. My memory's correct. It had an 0.031 CD, I think.
yeah. I'll have
Uh,
to go back and check that.
it was a had a phone in the armrest
Did it?
and Recaro seats, but it was a car made for speed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Very stable at speed, even
Yep.
slow 100-mile-per-hour speeds.
So with the rest of the motor development that you guys should know about, when I started, the salt has deteriorated a little bit, and I've deteriorated physically, and it's a lot of work to go from Kansas City to Bonneville.
Hmm.
And we had the record, and I had the fun years, and just didn't feel any more need to go back there. Somebody else can take it back there and set different records in different classes. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
The motor's much more powerful now
Is it?
than that one was.
Then the record year.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's making like what, like 200, 300 more horsepower with the wheels.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Because this is when you change from top end focus that you need at Bonneville to
Right.
the acceleration focus that you need, it's 4 drag strips is what it is.
Right.
You gotta get a heavy car off the line with a high first gear and a big turbo, and you can't do launches on pavement or you'll destroy the drivetrain. So I have always clutched it off the line. It's got a Tilton twin disc clutch in it. It's extremely heavy duty, but it's hard. It's hard getting a big turbo to spool off the line. And I built an acceleration motor. So I changed the stroke from the 86.4 to the 92.8. Got more displacement, more torque off the line, more mid-range torque, earlier spool. And when we went and did the standing mile with the Bonneville motor, the first year it was 196 because it was built for top end, not acceleration. And we went from 186 to 228, which is huge.
All right.
yeah.
So walk me through. Maybe it's in the ad already, but for the benefit of listeners and for me, frankly, what it's done Pikes Peak once. It's done Bonneville how many times?
2009, 2010, 2011, 2012.
Okay.
We went back there in 16 to try to raise the record because I knew the car could raise the record easily if I just went 4 miles both times.
Right.
Because I knew the rules now. But that year, the salt was in horrible condition. And when we got there, it looked like the Arctic. It was all puffy and it was all wet. In my opinion, they shouldn't even have held the race that year. But after the drivers' meeting, we drove the tow van down the track, and it was so rough. Even in a E350 Ford van, weighs 7,000 pounds, it was a rough track. The salt wasn't in good condition, and a lot of cars spun. A lot of cars, the streamliners got their under shielding tore off of them because they were bouncing so hard. At any rate, I made one pass in 2016, George, and the salt was so slippery and so wet that when I got to the top of fifth gear, where you normally floor the car, you
Yeah.
gotta be patient on salt. And you don't it's not like driving on pavement.
That's just because of the friction, the lack of friction, that it's not
Yeah, and skinny tires.
okay.
Yeah, it's slippery. At any rate, the salt can be a magnificent year where it's like white asphalt, or it can be terrible.
Mhm.
And when I matted the car at the top of fifth gear, it lit all four tires at over 220 miles an hour and danced around like a cockroach underneath me. And I shut it down because I promised my wife I wasn't going to kill myself. And I took it back, put it back in the trailer, and we went home.
Probably a
Probably a good
smart
call.
move, but
Yeah.
what
Yeah, I didn't want to tear me or the car up, and it was just terrible salt that year. And that was the last time we were out there. So I began focusing on changing over to the standing miles.
okay. And that's what you've done with it since primarily?
Yep. Yeah, we went from 196 with the Bonneville motor, which was made, like I said, for top end only. Went to 210, went to 213, went to 220. Now we're at 228. And
In the mile.
was so when we dynoed the car this past spring, getting ready for the spring event at Arkansas, ECTA, East Coast Timing Association. It had dynoed at 1155 horsepower. It was running great, but we went to put it back in the trailer and it didn't want to start, and we had to put a jumper on it. And I just thought, well, we hadn't had the charger on the 16-volt battery enough. I should have replaced the battery. When we got down to Arkansas, and we had the most incredible density altitude. It was cold, and there was a 20-mile-an-hour tailwind. And tailwinds are huge when you're fighting wind at speeds over 200, you know.
Yeah.
We had this beautiful cold air, and I went on my first pass, first gear, second gear, and the M-Tron. God, the M-Tron is so smart. That's the ECU. It could see that the battery was failing. The fuel pumps weren't pumping enough fuel. It widened it tried to widen the pulsation on the injectors. And when it couldn't do that, it cut the motor off. So all I got to do was first gear and second gear. And there's no way you can buy a 16-volt specialty AGM battery.
Yeah, you can't pick one of those up at AutoZone.
Yeah, you
Oh,
can't pick one up at AutoZone. And I was so depressed because we would have taken a record with that kind of tailwind and that kind of density altitude, cool weather and tailwind. I bet it would have gone 235, 236 in the standing mile.
Yep.
But that's when I said I've gotten too old and it's just too hard on me making these trips.
so it sounds like, well, did you run any when you were at Pikes Peak? Did you run any aerodynamic differences then, or did you just run the car as it was?
I just ran it in the stock
Did
shape.
you? It's one of the great things about that
Still,
race.
still had the rear view mirrors on
Did it?
it.
You had said, I'm jumping around a little bit, but you had said early on your first Audi was an S4. Is this the same S4?
Well, my
Oh,
first
he's got two.
Does he have
I've
two?
got I've got two. I've got my 94 street car, and this is the
Okay.
93 S4.
Okay.
But the black car was the first one you bought, right? That you referred
Yes,
to earlier?
I
Yeah.
got that in 1998.
Right.
Maybe it was no, it was 99.
Yeah. And that
But
car makes a cameo in a few of the shots, I think, in the
Does it?
auction. Yeah.
it's got
Uh,
725 horsepower.
yes. It's very modestly powered.
725. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the daily.
Yeah. Well, all right. So that's a good lead into the engine business. You've been building Audi engines now for a while. Can you tell me more a little bit about that?
Well, I opened the engine shop in 2010. And after the race car was built, I built the car at Import Masters down at 31st and Cherry in Midtown, Kansas City. And that's why it says Import Masters across the hood. And why Mike Schoengert has always been on my crew. And super good guy, super duper at repairing Audis and Volkswagens. They call him Dr. Quattro. At any rate, he let me build the car. I didn't have the engine shop yet. So, a very kind paint shop let me sand the car, prep the car for paint. After I put the roll cage in it at Import Masters, I built the roll cage all myself.
Did you?
That was, at my age then, that was tough because you got to twist so many directions and put your body in so many tough positions to do all the welding and build a cage inside the car without chopping the top off and then putting it back on. Built a roll cage and then we had it painted in white inside and out because I know when you go to Bonneville, you want a white car that reflects the sun. And I knew it would be pretty. Built it all in 2007 and 2008. Finished it in the spring of 2008, took it to Colorado for the dyno, and then went up the mountain. And got that off my bucket list, and then came back and started focusing the car on Bonneville. And then in 2010, I got the engine shop lease, and started building engines, as you asked about, George.
Yeah.
I was building all engines back then. Big block Chevys, Hemis, BMWs, Subarus,
A little bit of everything.
Hondas and Acuras for the drag car guys, and mostly hot rod motors. I didn't build any stock motors. But my focus was on the Audi motor. That's why it's called four-ring performance engineering. That was
And now you were saying before we were chatting before the call started, you're one of the few or the only person still doing the 5-cylinder builds today in the U.S.
well, there's people that do 5-cylinder builds as far as the classic ADU, ABYs, the ANs, 7As. I'm the only one that I know of in the country that does the CNC porting of the cylinder heads. There
Okay.
are other people that build them, but there's so many people. I've had to retire because, as I told you, I got joints that need to be replaced, and I can't work down near the floor, George. I can work on benches. I can roll stuff around on my carts. I can, work in a cylinder head shop, which
Yeah.
I do. And I'll still keep doing the cylinder heads. I'll still keep selling high performance parts for the classic Audis,
Yeah.
That's just my focus in retirement,
Yeah.
I think it's a concern in the community as to who's going to carry the torch here. You got Mark out of EFI, who's he's building motors to a decent degree, but not to the level that Jeff is, as far as I know. So I think there's some concern as to who's going to carry the torch here. And
Dan, since 2010, I've built over 200 classic Audi
yeah,
5-cylinders.
Have you really?
Yep.
most of them are still around somewhere.
When I go through the pictures on my phone and my old phone that's laying in the cabinet, it just blows my mind how many
Sure.
pictures I've taken them, because I always take pictures and send them to the client as I'm
Yep.
building their motor, so they can see what's going inside of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I always want the client to see what they're paying for. Man, when you go back through my phone, it's just mind blowing. And the phone before that.
Have you ever thought about? I'm thinking of as you're talking about this, right? And the need for it, especially. I got a buddy here locally. We started during the pandemic. Some friends of mine and I, local car guys, started a Cars and Coffee. And one of the guys I know from that Cars and Coffee, who comes from more of the older American stuff, started apprenticing with a guy who is a specialist and near a guy who's near retirement, who's a specialist in early Corvette fuel injection. And so when he retires, my buddy will be in a great position to, kind of continue that work, if you will. I'm
Yeah.
curious if anybody's ever approached you or if you're interested in an apprenticeship of some sort to teach your art to another.
Yeah, well, there's nothing more dynamic on the face of the earth. A rocket engine, a jet engine, their internal dynamics are nothing compared to a piston-driven engine.
Yeah.
Every single thing within the engine affects the dynamics of every other thing. And it's just it's the most dynamic thing as far as engines go in the world. Is a piston driven engine. And there's just so much to know.
Yep. Well,
All right. I'll
I'm
ask you
sure
a
somebody will
generalist
explain.
question there. What do you like about the Audi? Since you worked on so many motors, what do you like about the Audi 5-cylinder in particular over other engines?
Well, the thing that's coolest about it is that it's an extremely heavy duty, high nickel iron block. A German, they were built in a separate factory. They weren't built in the same factory as all the other stuff.
Hmm.
And the S cars. German cast iron has a higher nickel content. And, when you're honing a motor and their honing guru says, this is a lot harder to take material out of than an American V8 is, it's just the content of the iron in the block, the shortness of the block, because they had to design it to be short because it had to sit in front of the transmission and they
Yeah.
wanted to keep the front end of the car as short as possible. So it's an extremely rigid block. It doesn't flex. I mean, the stock block is good for 1,300 wheel horsepower. If you're doing drag strip launches and you're running 75 pounds of boost with methanol,
Right.
which is going to push it up to 1,700 horsepower, then you need probably a modern day aluminum billet block. And the crankshaft, George,
Yeah.
the forged quality of the stock crankshaft. I mean, my Bonneville motors had stock cranks in them.
Did they really?
I had, ported and polished the crankshaft to slick them up, But the crankshaft is incredibly rigid. You put good aftermarket connecting rods and good aftermarket pistons in there, you can tune the boost way the hell up. And it's got a very heavy duty cylinder head. It's not, when you carry an Audi assembled head around, it's very, very heavy compared to a Honda or Mitsubishi or whatnot. It's a
Yeah.
really heavy duty head. The valve design on these old cars, it's not a full pent roof like a Cosworth. It's these cylinder heads were originally on the naturally aspirated rabbit motor, and they added a cylinder to it. So it's got vertical exhausts and tilted intakes, which isn't as good as a pent roof like the Daza. you know.
Right.
It's just heavy duty stuff. It's heavy and heavy duty and very rigid. And if you put high quality fasteners in it and you know how to torque things and retorque things, it's virtually impossible to, and proper tuning is everything.
Yeah.
You know, proper tune. These stock heads and stock blocks and stock cranks are good for 1200 wheel.
That is crazy.
We're going for.
Yeah. All right. So car sells on Thursday. Damn, why don't
We'll
we
see.
couple it? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So hopefully it does.
If it hits the reserve, yeah. Fair point. But so that's probably a good segue, though, Dan. You started, at least when I got to know you, you were doing long roof rally and those events, and then, but you've been in the space for a long time. You've built several of these cars since I've known you. A C3, then later an S6, which would be a C4. Now you're doing auctions. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I've been a car enthusiast since I was in high school. I used to build Jeeps, built a couple Cherokees for off-roading New England trails, and got
Like
into that whole scene.
like full size or
Um,
YJs?
XJs.
Sorry, XJ. XJ is the little
Yeah,
one, right? Like, yeah. Sorry.
it was like a 99, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 90 out of 99 and 96. And then I moved to the city, to New York City, the city here, in 2007, and sold my Jeep. I was in the city for about 10 years or so, and was carless for most of that time. And then in 2014, I, got the bug again after holding off for a long time, and I found a B7 S4 Avant that was for sale actually in Kansas, out by you, Jeff. And I shipped that to the city, and I was street parking it and freaking out, and that's kind of helped, nudge me along to getting my wife out of the city and getting out into the countryside and getting a house with a garage. And so once that happened, then I spiraled down the path of mods again and got involved in the scene again. And yeah, at that point, I found what the car crews out in New England that became Long Roof Rally back in 2014, 2015 or so. And it was essentially it ended up becoming one of the organizers and leaders of that event, which I still am. As life happens, it gets harder and harder to keep this thing going each year because it's just a
Yeah.
bootstrapped event. But I think we had
Well,
probably 100 cars last year. We're going to open up registration any day now, basically, and
all
get
right.
the 25 event going.
Well,
Yeah.
really
So
quick.
anyway, over the course of the time, I've been in and out of various cars, mostly
Yeah.
Audis, but I've sold a lot of cars at auction and done pretty well with it, and kind of figured out a lot of the secret sauce to getting cars to do well, and just sort of how to tend an auction properly, how to present a car properly, and I'd sold cars on just about every platform. So I got laid off last year and basically got tired of applying to jobs and going to interviews and things like that, and
I hear
decided to start my own company that just did, dedicated to auctioning cars for people. So that's how this came about. Authentic Auctions, we founded it officially about 2 months ago, but I started auctioning cars for friends basically the end of 24. So just doing it, just word of mouth, and hey, you want to sell this? Let me auction it for you. I'll handle it. So that's kind of how it grew. And Jeff and I sort of just started talking about it. God, probably 6 months ago almost, I would say. And then, he finally got serious about it, and he was like, let's do this. And I'm like, well, I better fly out there. So that's kind of how this came about. It's good. It's basically, I don't know if it's just the economy or what, but there's a lot of people that want to sell their cars right now. So it's actually been quite busy.
it.
Related to this car, actually, I have another car that's coming up soon. There's a 92 S4 in Colorado that a man purchased with his wife, new from the dealer, and he is now selling it. So he's the original owner. Car has 64,000 miles on it, and
Wow.
it's all original. And I'm bringing that to auction on Bring a Trailer. Should go live the end of this week, actually. So, of course, this is my where I want to be, right? I want to be auctioning cars that I care about, for people
Right.
like Jeff, for just cars that I know. And that's kind of how I'm building the business out. It's just sort of, word of mouth and people seeing like, clearly I have a good handle on represent a car like this, how to talk about it, that sort of thing. So that's kind of how I'm growing the business out.
It's funny. I have a friend who does a lot of business as well with like Bring a Trailer and primarily with that site, but occasionally Cars and Bids and what is it, P-Car Marketplace. It's funny how a car properly listed, properly photographed, thoroughly, especially in Bring a Trailer, I see that like the peanut gallery there can be very discerning and very vocal
Yeah.
so having the care of listing a car properly, I know a couple guys who've really kind of started to focus on that and do it. Some
Yeah.
people do it well, some people, maybe less so. And I think that's so having a mind for the details of what you're doing and particularly the presentation. It's funny. I think we all think, well, I can just list my car, but I'll tell you, I shoot my own photography. I've got a couple cars. You know what I mean? Like I almost don't want to
Yeah.
list. I'd rather go with somebody who knows the game because
Yeah, it's a game. It really is a game. Just negotiating with the auction houses alone is quite a game. I mean,
it's
we did engage with, and I don't want to like go throwing people under the carpet here, under the mud,
right.
in the mud, but we did engage with Bring a Trailer on this car, and they just didn't quite seem to get it. They seemed to treat it like it was just a modified S4. And Cars and Bids, on the other hand, for whatever reason, maybe it's because Doug DeMiro is an Audi guy, they were like, let's go. They were super excited about it. They didn't hassle us on the reserve at all. They were just excited to have the car on the site. So it depends on the car, it depends on, so many different variables, but
Yeah.
just in how you approach that and what car should go to on what platform, it all matters. Just how to present the car, what to show, which is basically everything. As I said to Jeff, all we can do is just lay all the cards on the table, show every detail, and tell the entire backstory of the car, and then we have to let the car speak for itself and Jeff's background speak for itself, and that's
Right.
all we can do. And then I said, the other part of the equation is just getting out there and trying to promote it as much as possible. But we're getting tons of views in the auction. It's getting around, so it's just a matter of who wants to continue this dream, which is racing this car that I'm sure most people would look at this and be like, why are you racing this, at Bonneville, right? So it's kind of this like quirky, like Audi nerd dream, right? And who's going to be like, yes, I want to continue this. This is awesome, and I'm going to take it back. We ideally, Jeff and I share this. The goal is to get somebody who's going to take this thing back out and run it, right? And not just put it in a car collection
And the
somewhere.
collection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully we find the right buyer and the right person steps up. We'll see.
I got
Yeah.
a couple of things to add, guys.
Yeah.
Sure.
What I want to focus on as the conversation, our chat is ending, we need to let people know that they'll also be able to buy the trailer that I've been using since 2011, if they want to add that to the purchase as an option on,
Yep.
on top.
Yep. And I mentioned that in the auction.
Yeah.
And the other thing to note, that I've mentioned, but we'll focus on that again, and we can chat about it here, is that the car is coming with two setups, right? It's basically there's a Bonneville car setup, and then there's a standing mile setup, and it's got
Yeah.
Bonneville tires and wheels, and it's got standing mile tires and wheels, and it's got a Bonneville turbo and a standing mile turbo, and so it's basically like turnkey, choose your own adventure here. You can take this car to Bonneville, do a standing mile run on the way back, and then go to a roll racing event if you wanted to, right?
Well, the other thing I wanted
Dynamic
to
car.
mention, Dan, is Nick Pavlovsky at Cohesion Motorsports. He's one of the greatest tuners on the face of the planet.
Yep.
And such a intelligent, smart guy. And he will keep tuning and supporting the M-Tron in the car when anybody needs to change anything. It would require slight retuning when you switch the turbo, back to the Bonneville turbo.
Right, of course. Yep.
But Nick Pavlovsky is just so intelligent and so experienced as a tuner. Cohesion Motorsports is a great company, and he'll continue to support the car as in tuning. And the most important thing that I want to let you guys know, and I'm sure it's in the sales information somewhere. Anybody that buys the car, I will have a huge, thick book of schooling for them about everything they need to know to maintain the car, to drive the car. They will be highly and friendly. I will focus on teaching them anything about the car that they need to know.
Yep.
From
It was my opening comment on the auction. Actually, was that that
That's
it comes with a
excellent.
full download from you on the background of the car, how to operate it, and how to maintain it. So
yeah, it's I've known the car forever, but I need to transfer that knowledge to whoever buys it. Everything about the car will be taught to the person that buys it in a very friendly, kind, and patient manner.
unless they
Excellent.
break it.
Yeah. Well, so just quick to verify. So the two the two turbo configurations that comes with the auction. The trailer is it an option after the auction. So the bid is for the car and the
Correct.
configuration.
The winning bidder will have the option to purchase the trailer at like a reasonable market price, basically.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's an enclosed trailer, 26 feet long. It's basically set up to transport the car and to act as the home base basically to run
Right.
the car at Bonneville, etc. Yep.
Very, very nice trailer, and it sell for a very reasonable price when somebody buys the car. I just want anybody that buys it to know they will learn everything about operating the car, racing the car, and maintaining the car.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yep. So yeah, so it's going to be exciting. I keep telling Jeff he's watching this, and the auctions like in between day 1 and day 6, day 7, they can be it can become sort of quiet.
Right.
So we're sort of in that time right now, but as we get into Wednesday, I think things will start to heat up, and then we'll sort of see who comes out. It's going to be fascinating to see.
Yeah, for sure.
All kinds of people are into me on this, and there's definitely real racers and builders that are interested in this thing.
Yeah.
So,
Good awareness. That's excellent.
yeah. So we shall see.
Well, it's been really nice talking to you guys, and I hope information helps people decide whether they want to buy it or not.
I'm sure it will, sir. It's been a pleasure for me. I've wanted to finally make contact, but also to learn a lot more about your experiences in the car is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, well, it's one of the greatest blessings of my life that my wife supported this and she supported me. I got to do this, and somebody else can get to do it now. That's a cool thing.
Are you gonna be pissed off if they break your record with the car?
No,
All
I'll try to help them break the record.
right. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably a great note on which to end. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this evening. It's a fascinating story. I wish you the best of luck with the auction.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, thanks for hosting this call, and it's great to chat about more about the car. So,
Well,
and
George,
Jeff's history.
George, with your background, having run the Audi Club North America, it's very kind of you to do this.
Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. I'm gonna stop recording. I got a couple other questions for you, but I'm not gonna.
Okay, cool. We'll stay on.